when we're looking at writing descriptions for our A, B, and C levels of performance, that we only wrote 3 levels. Because what happens, and this is what Jim Popham says, if you try to write more than 3, then sometimes you don't have that language to discriminate between those levels of performance. So we decided to limit ourselves to 3, and I think that was a very good decision. And then we looked at those words and descriptions that really separated out students who were of an A performance, a B performance, like this. We would say under the A performance, these students were consistent. We saw this performance happen all the time. For the students at the B level, we learned that these were frequent performances that we would see most of the time. And in the C level, these were students who needed more time, some of the time. We would see this learning be demonstrated, and these students would need some assistance. Maybe some time, more time, or encouragement. Whereas under the A, these students were able to work independently. They were independent. Sometimes in this level, these students were expanding their skills, and they might need some help from time to time, but most of the time they were able to do the job, and that's what we thought. They were our typical students who would just take charge and finish the work and do a good job of this. Under the A, these were the students where we would find more complex learning. They would be more in-depth in their responses. The C students, they would be able to get the gist, the main idea. And the B students would be in between these. So these became the keywords that we used every time where we had to write these 3 levels of description for each of the big ideas. So we had to do this for each of them, so we would have to write descriptions 4 or 5 times for each of the big ideas that we had already developed and identified. So we then had to decide on what assignments that we already were giving students we would use as evidence for how well students had accomplished this big idea, how well they read and how they understood different kinds of texts. And the assignments that we chose, we had a variety. We had our reader responses that students had done, and they had selected 2 to hand in for evaluation. We also had reading conferences that we did with students, and they did as peers. And that also gave us our observations and our notes about how students read and how they understood the material. And the third idea that we had under evidence was the tests that we gave, the comprehension tests. So we could see in an isolated incident how students coped with different kinds of texts and how they understood it. And we found that this made it very clear which of those assignments corresponded to which of the big ideas. So for each big idea, we then looked at what evidence did we have that would help us decide how that student had performed.